Sweet Manuka, clear acacia, honey, honey, honey in 1,000 flavors.
Hello everybody, I'm Sam and today we're going to learn all about honey, how bees make it, what it's made from and how it gets from the hive onto your piece of toast at tea time. Now today I'm in Buckinghamshire in a forest, which is where you'll meet this gentleman. This is Jed and he's our guide for today. Hello Jed.
Hi Sam.
Thank
Hi,
you
kids.
for having us here in your forest. First of all, I think the children are probably going to be wondering why we're wearing these white overalls. So can you explain why we need to wear these?
Well, they protect us from the bees and they're nice and light, so on the sunny days it helps keep us nice and cool.
I tell you what, I'm glad I've got them on because if you can listen really carefully, you probably hear the buzzing sounds of bees because they are everywhere, aren't they, Jed? Literally.
Yes, they just love us.
How long have you been working with bees for then?
Well, I started 40 years ago, but 30 years ago I went full-time doing it as a job for a living.
And you're very, very high up in the bee world, aren't you? A little birdie tells me.
Well, I was very fortunate to be offered Master Craftsman in Beekeeping this spring by
Wow.
my fellow bee farmers, and it's a very privileged position.
So you must look after a lot of hives and a lot of bees to get that position.
Yes, we have about 250 honey producing hives and then another 600 for producing queen bees, and they're scattered around the area on about 20 different sites just like this one.
So how many bees would you have overall?
Approximately middle of summer it's 10 million.
10 million bees! That's crazy! Do you name them all, Jed?
No.
No, I didn't think so. I think Jed's the perfect person to tell us all about bees and honey. So first of all, tell us what we're going to see here today on this online field trip.
Well, we're going to go and open up one of the hives and have a look inside, see all the bees in there, see the honey, hopefully see some young bees, and with a bit of luck we'll actually find the queen bee in there in amongst all the others.
That's amazing, can't wait. Shall we find out who we've got joining us on this online field trip today? Let's meet our schools, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over to our first school. Let's go over to Derby Grammar School. Hello everybody. This is Mrs. Gender's class. Hello children.
Hi.
They've all been learning about bees in their classrooms, Jed. Let's go over to Holy Trinity Rosehill School in Stockton-on-Tees. Hello Mr. Waller's class. Hello children. Hello. And finally, let's go over to Takeley School in Dunmow, where Miss Griffith's class is taking part. Hello, children.
Hi.
Hi, lots of lovely smiley faces there. Now, I know most of you have been busy bees in your classrooms already, learning all about bees and all about honey. We hope you've enjoyed the activities and we'll find out what you've learned in a little while. But first of all, let's find out more about Jed, our bee expert. So, Jed, what is your title? Is it honey maker, beekeeper?
Technically I'm a bee farmer. It is my job, my livelihood. I farm bees, so I'm a bee farmer.
A bee farmer. Is there an average kind of day for a bee farmer, or is every day different?
Every day does vary a lot with the season and the weather. In the summer we spend most of the time going round the hives, checking how they are, seeing if there's any honey ready to take off. We'll take that home, extract it and get it ready to put into jars, put other boxes on if they need them, and we do that all day long during the summer.
It's lovely. I've been outside in the fresh air. It's really nice. I bet it's not as nice if it's raining. What about the winter as well, though? Is that a bit of a tough time, or is it a quiet time for you?
Yes, summer we work every hour we can. Winter, which for us starts in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, we shut the bees down and there's not a lot for us to do. So we just take it easy, relax, go on holiday if I can afford it, or get a job if I haven't earned enough money during the summer.
Lovely. It's kind of like the children's equivalent of their summer holidays, isn't it, when they take 6 or 7 weeks off?
A bit
Very
like
nice.
that, but colder.
Yes, you have the winter, of course, not so much sun. As I said, a lot of our children have been learning all about bees in their classrooms. So let's find out what the children of Derby Grammar School have learned. Have we got some bee facts there, please, Mrs. Gender?
I've learned that 1 spoonful of honey is enough to get enough energy for a bee going all around the world.
That's a great fact. Wonderful. So a spoonful of honey gives a bee enough energy to let it fly all the way around the world.
Yes. I mean, another way of wording it is the bee would have to fly all the way around the world to actually make a teaspoon of honey, because it does that many miles actually collecting the nectar to make the honey.
Wow, what a great fact. That's brilliant. Do we have another one?
I have learnt that a colony of bee could have 60,000 bees in.
Fantastic. So a colony of bees could have 60,000 bees in.
That's right. The number does vary depending on the weather, the types of bee and so on, but 60,000 is the sort of top number. Some of them will creep a bit higher, but 50 to 60,000 is the summer average.
They really have been learning, haven't they, all about bees? You might be losing your job soon, Jed.
I am quite worried.
And our final fact from Derby Grammar School.
I've learned that honey can also be used as a sweetener and cooking, and was widely used for the purpose in England. It was also discovered before sugar.
Wow, so honey can be used in cooking. It was also discovered before sugar.
Yes, it was. The early cave paintings that you see from very ancient times show pictures of man actually gathering wild honeycomb to eat.
I've been learning about bees as well this week. I learned that bees are really, really important to help our food grow, and without bees our food wouldn't grow.
That's exactly right. When the bees fly to the flowers to collect nectar, they brush past the pollen on the flower, and then when they pass to the next flower, they transfer the pollen, and that's pollinating the flowers, which gives us the seeds and berries and fruit from the flowers, which all the wild birds, insects and animals live on. And also on the agricultural crops, they pollinate some of them, which is what we use to eat. So without the bees, there'd be very little food for most of the things in the world, and that includes us. So without honeybees, we'd all die.
So bees are very, very important indeed. I'll tell you what, let's find out more about these very important bees in this short video. And watch very carefully as well, because there'll be an opportunity to ask Jed some questions a little later on.
What is a honeybee? Honeybees live in hives, and every hive can have as many as 80,000 bees living within it. Every year, each hive of bees can collect as much as 100 kilograms of honey. In the UK, there are more than 250 species of bee, but only one special species are able to make honey. Inside each hive there is a queen bee. She is bigger than the rest of the bees, and she lives for up to 10 years. She lays as many as 2,000 eggs each day. She is the mother of all the other bees in the hive. The eggs that the queen lays will become either female worker bees or male drones. Female worker bees hatch after 21 days. Male drones hatch after 24 days. The larva hatches from the egg, then the bee emerges from the cell after pupation. The role of the male drone is to mate with the queen. The role of the female is to do all the work in the hive. As a young bee, she looks after the queen, looks after the babies, cleans the hive, and guards the entrance. There are many more female worker bees than male drones in the hive. A worker bee can fly at up to 15 miles per hour, beating its wings an amazing 200 times each second. In the warm summer months, the older worker bees spend a lot of time outside the hive collecting nectar from the flowers. While they're collecting the nectar, they also pollinate the plants and flowers. As they climb onto the petals, they rub pollen inside, and this starts the process of making fruit or seeds for the plant. In the winter, when the weather is cold and there are no flowers left to gather nectar from, the bees will live off the honey they have gathered over the summer. When it's time for the beekeeper to harvest the honey from the hives, he always leaves enough to feed the bees over the winter, or they would starve. The bees don't leave the hive over this time because it is too cold for them. They are cold-blooded and so need the warmth of the sun to be able to fly. Although the bees stay inside the hive in the cold, rainy months, they do not hibernate. They keep busy looking after the hive. The queen starts laying eggs in January, and so the bees keep the centre of the hive nice and warm to allow the eggs to hatch. These baby bees will be the next generation to make yummy honey for your tea.
Wow, so that's how bees get the name busy bees. Very, very busy indeed. As you can see, we've got our hats on now because we're stood right next to a hive, and we are going to take a look inside the hive in just a minute. But first of all, Jed, back to that video. What really sort of marvelled me is the fact that the bees, they spend their winter inside the hive, but then they don't hibernate.
No, that's exactly right, Sam. Honeybees do not hibernate. Wasps, bumblebees, other insects, other animals actually hibernate. The honeybees get the nectar, turn it into honey and store it in the hive, so they've got food to keep them going over winter. Although they don't come out of the hive, when it's cold they'll cuddle together, a bit like penguins on the ice. They'll all cuddle in, and the ones on the outside actually insulate that ball of bees in the hive, so that in the middle of winter the queen can start laying eggs, which will produce all the bees for the next summer. And the outside might be freezing cold, but the centre of that cluster of bees will be at our body temperature, and they're just eating some of the honey to keep them going. On the sunny days they will come out, but they've got plenty of sense. If it's too cold, they'll stay in at home and just cuddle together.
So they're very, very clever indeed, aren't they? I think some of our children may have learned another new word in that video as well. Pupation. Could you tell us what that means, Jed?
All right, that pupation, that's after the queen's laid the egg, it hatches into a little grub, a little round white grub, and that develops, and then it's sealed over, and it changes from that grub into the bee, and that's the pupation process, and then it emerges from the honeycomb as a fully grown bee. It's very similar to caterpillars going into their chrysalises and coming out of them as butterflies.
Absolutely fascinating. So I know the children now are thinking, when are we going to get to see the bees close up? So I think we should get inside that hive, if that's okay, Jed. Can we do that?
We certainly can.
Okay.
I've got my daughter Rebecca here, fortunately, who's got everything ready for us, and we'll open it up and see what we can find.
Great stuff. So I notice you're being very brave and you haven't got your gloves on, Jed. Is that because the bees know you?
Yes, they all love me.
So what's the smoking doing for the bees? Why do you do that?
The theory behind it is it's in their natural situation. They're in a hole in the tree, and if there's a forest fire, they have to fill up with honey and get ready to evacuate.
Oh, okay.
By giving them a bit of smoke, they concentrate on potentially having to move home, rather than why on earth is someone taking our home apart and getting rid of us.
So you're distracting them. Okay, very clever.
So we're just going to ease a frame out here carefully.
Okay. Wow, look at that, children. Amazing. So they are now busying over their honey. And so what's this kind of lighter stuff that's here, Jen?
It's all made out of beeswax, and as soon as the honey's actually ready and stable, they'll cap it over with a bit more wax. You can see there's some down here glistening.
Okay.
That isn't quite ready yet, so they haven't filled it up. And there's a bee feeding at the moment. I said about the smoke making them feed, and they're feeding away there on the honey. Let's go in a bit further and see what else we can find.
Okay, great. So it's kind of like them putting their own little lid on a jar once the honey is up to the top, and then they just dip in there throughout the winter, do they, to get the food to keep going?
Exactly right, you've got it.
Wow. The sound is amazing, the busy, busy buzzing sound.
We're just looking through, seeing what we can find.
Okay, so there is one queen bee in here that we're hopefully going to find at some point. How will we know that we found the queen bee? What does she look like?
Well, fortunately, we've put a little dot on her back to make her easier to find, but that doesn't mean we're going to find her straight away.
Okay, so she rules the roost, does she here?
Yes, she is the queen, she is the one in charge. The other bees look after her, do everything for her. Her sole function is to lay eggs, and she'll lay up to 2,000 eggs a day in the height of summer.
Wow, 2,000 a day?
Yep, and the other bees will feed her, look after her, groom her, everything that's with.
So she doesn't feed herself, she just waits for...
There she is.
Okay. Oh.
Let's turn it round so you can all see.
Oh wow, yes, with the red dot. And she's a lot bigger, isn't she? Or
Yeah,
quite a bit bigger.
Quite a bit bigger. And she's just looking for somewhere to lay eggs. What I'll do is I'll give her to Rebecca to hold carefully so we don't lose her. and we can go in and see if we can find anything else of interest in here.
Okay, so Rebecca has the queen bee so she doesn't fly away, and because that's really important, is it? And what would happen if the queen bee went missing out of here?
They'd be upset.
Oh,
Now, what we've got here, we've got 1 or 2 younger bees, and let's see if we can find any hatching bees.
so you've been really gentle, but not many people touch bees with their hands, Jed. You've been very brave.
No, I wouldn't be. You've got to be gentle, otherwise they'd get rid of me. Their bees just cleaning cells up down there. What we're hoping to find is one actually hatching.
It's a little baby to be coming out.
There should be somewhere around here.
And so when the babies come out, Jed, are they just ready to work like these bees are?
Yes, the first thing they do when they come out is they go on to household duties, generally cleaning. That one's cleaning up a cell at the moment, ready for the queen to lay in it.
Is it like a pecking order then of who does what job?
Yes, they're all women, and they do most of the work. I can't see any male bees here. Let's have a look on another frame. Rebecca's got the queen safely in there, so we can whiz through here.
Wow. This is great. I think it's a rarity to see bees so close like this. I'm so glad I've got my suit on.
Not any male bees in here. Oh yes, look what we've got here.
Okay.
Here's one that's been out busy. She's gathered pollen on her legs there. They've got little hairy knees effectively on their legs, which they stick all the pollen to, and they're able to fly back with great big lumps of pollen, which they'll store in the honeycomb. They use the pollen to feed the young grubs that you saw in the video. It's very high in protein and very nutritious for them. The adult bees only actually eat nectar or honey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jed. Should we let the bees have a little, have a little rest, but they just keep busying away, don't they?
Yeah, we'll let them get on with what they do best.
Yeah.
And we'll shut this up now. If Rebecca can just pop the queen back in, she can run down the combs back into the hive.
There we go.
We just want her to go downwards, not upwards. No.
There we go.
Smoke her, Becky. Okay. She does not want to go down there. There she goes.
So important that she's kept, isn't it? There we go. Down she goes.
Before we put this
Safe and
in,
sound.
we better get rid of the bees.
Wow. Gosh, how many's there, Jed? Well, how many's in the whole thing?
Well, I don't think we've got time to count them today, Sam,
No,
but we'll have a go later on, okay?
All right. Quite a few.
Put the top back on, lid on,
That's great.
job done.
Well, I'm asking all the questions, Jed, but I have a feeling that some of our children will have questions for you after seeing all of that amazing stuff that's happening inside that hive. So let's go over to Holy Trinity Rosehill School, where Mr. Waller's class are taking part. And do we have any questions, Mr. Waller, for Jed?
How does a bee build its hive?
How do bees build their hive?
The hive they're in here is a box obviously we've made, but the actual honeycomb, they secrete it. It's a bit like we sweat. It comes out as oily, greasy wax from their abdomen, and they're able to work it with their feet and squash it into the wax cells you see in the hive. We've got a little bit of honeycomb on the desk we
We'll
can
take
show
a
you
look.
later.
Fantastic. Great question. Do we have another one, Mr. Waller?
How does a queen bee become a queen bee, and how can it be identified?
So how can we identify the queen bee then, Jed?
Well, in the hive you saw we cheated. We put a dot on her to make it really easy. But the queen bee, when they start life, they're female obviously, and at the egg stage they're exactly the same as the worker bees, which are all female. But while they're a grub, they get fed royal jelly all the time, which is why it's called royal jelly, because it turns an ordinary worker into a queen. And she develops bigger and she's fertile, so she can lay eggs, and she's just that little bit bigger, longer legs, and behaves slightly differently. And it's all because when she was very, very young, she was fed royal jelly.
Wow, just goes to show it's what you eat that makes you strong,
Yeah.
obviously. Great question. Do we have another one from Mr. Waller's class?
Do all bees sting?
Do all bees sting, Jed?
Well, all the female bees can sting. They don't necessarily sting. As you saw there, we didn't get stung. But the male bees can't sting. The queen bees can sting, but they will only ever sting another queen bee when they're fighting over who's going to actually rule the hive, because it's a monarchy, and mono means one, so there's only ever one queen in a hive. If there is more than one, they actually will fight till one of them's killed, and that's the only time a queen will sting.
Oh, fascinating. Okay, one last question from Mr. Waller's class.
How many different varieties of honey are there?
That's a really good question. How many different varieties of honey are there, Jed?
Well, I could ask you how many different types of flower there are, because every flower that secretes nectar gives a different flavour and a different type of honey. But when the bees actually go and gather the nectar, often they'll gather it from several different flowers, different types of flower at once, so they mix all the nectar together, and the honey from that is a mix of all the flavours. If you can actually get a field with just one type of flower in it, the bees will produce honey from just that one crop. And so technically speaking, you can get as many different types of honey as you can nectar secreting flowers.
And fantastic. Okay, let's go over to Takeley School now with Miss Griffiths' class. Do we have any questions for Jed?
How do bees celebrate other bees' birthday?
That's a great question. How do bees celebrate other bees' birthday, Jed?
With a beef day.
A beef day party. And they drink lots of honey.
Of course, or
Yeah.
mead if they're old enough.
Oh, mead. Oh, yes, lovely. Another question for Jed.
Why do bees sting you?
Why do bees sting you, Jed?
My bees don't sting me because they love me, but bees will sting, usually if they're trying to defend themselves. If you're doing something silly, if you're trying to whack at them, or if you're knocking them about. You saw I was quite gentle when I was working on the hive because I didn't want to upset them, didn't want to disturb them. If they get upset, they will sting you.
You are very calm when a bee lands on you. It doesn't bother you anymore, does it? I've got my helmet still on. Let's go over for another question to Mrs. Griffiths' class.
We keep bees in our school. Do you have any advice for us?
Great. Oh, so they keep bees in the school. Do you have any advice for the children keeping the bees?
Yes, go and see them as often as you can, especially on the sunny days when they're busy because they're a lot friendlier. And get in touch with your local beekeeping club. I'm sure they'll have someone who can help you look at them and point out all the interesting things that are in the hive.
But just be gentle with them as well, like you are, I guess. And the last question?
Why was the why was the queen bigger?
That's a really good question. Why is the queen bigger, Jed?
She's partly bigger because she's fed better than the other bees. She has an absolutely perfect diet. The other bees, if there's a lack of food in the hive, will actually give it up to feed the queen and die rather than her go without food. She is fed extremely well looked after, and also partly by her very biology, she's got to lay up to 2,000 eggs a day, so she needs to be bigger to have all those eggs stored inside her.
Fantastic. Well, we're learning all about the bees, and we did mention as well about the different types of honey coming from different flowers. So let's watch our next video now, which is all about how the bees turn that nectar they collect from plants into yummy honey.
Honey, from the hive to you. Honey is made by female worker bees who fly from flower to flower collecting nectar. They suck the nectar up using their tubular tongues, called a proboscis, and store it in their stomachs. Bees have special enzymes in their stomachs that can turn the nectar into watery honey. The bees put the watery honey into a cell of the honeycomb. Honeycomb is made out of a waxy substance the bees make, called beeswax. The bees turn the watery honey into thick honey by fanning it with their wings. This evaporates the water from the honey and makes it thick and golden. When the honey is thick enough, the bees cover the honeycomb cell with a cap to keep it safe. It takes an amazing 5,000 worker bees to gather enough nectar to make just one small jar of honey. That's a lot of flying, collecting, and honey making. Beekeepers take a small amount of honeycomb from each hive. They can tell it's time to harvest a hive when they can see wax caps on the top of the honeycomb. They take the wax caps off the top and the honey pours out. Bees make much more honey than they need to live on, so the beekeeper can take some from each hive without harming the bees.
Honey, honey, food for the bees, made with the pollen from the flowers and trees.
The honey from the hives is placed in drums and transported to the factory.
Sweet manuka, clear acacia, honey, honey, honey in 1,000 flavors, tasty on your toast and gravy tea.
Then it is cleaned and filtered, taking out anything you wouldn't want to eat. The warm, filtered honey is stored in large vats. The honeymakers regularly check the temperature to make sure it's correct. When the production line is ready, the honey is put into containers and labelled. This factory fills around 1 million jars a week. Finally, the jars are put into boxes and then packed into lorries, ready to take to your local store. Next time you have honey on your toast, don't forget to think of all the thousands of hard-working bees who made it especially for you.
Okay, so as you can see, we've moved a safe enough distance away from the hive. That was great though, Jed. That was absolutely fascinating. So good. Right, we have some honey in front of us and lots of lovely contraptions as well. We are going to try the honey in just a second, but we must remember, although honey is a great source of manganese, which is really good for like strong, healthy bones and also for energy metabolism as well. It's also 76% sugar. So as all sugary food, you know, you should eat it in moderation. So just so you know, you can't be shoveling pots and pots of honey in as well. Now, Jed, you're going to talk us through some of this honey here, aren't you? And while you do that, classrooms, you should have lots of different types of honey in your class. So pass them around, try the different types, try and guess kind of what flower the honey is made from, because of course they all taste differently depending on where they've come from. And don't get too sticky. So Jed, tell us a bit about the honey that we have here on the table.
So we've got two different types of honey here. We've got a clear honey and a set honey. Now all nectar when it comes into the hive is runny, clear, and the honey is all clear to start with. Some of the honey, the flowers vary, like we said, with the smell, and honey has different properties. Some of it will set quite quickly, and what we do as beekeepers and the packers on the video you've just seen, they'll use the ones that tend to set quickly for the set honey. Equally, the ones that stay clear for a long time, they'll actually use for the clear honey. All honey that's set, if you warm it gently, will go clear and you won't lose any of the flavour. Similarly, the clear honey, if you stir in a little bit of set honey to the clear honey, it will set. And so long as you're careful with the temperatures, you won't spoil the flavour.
Fascinating.
We mentioned earlier, flowers smell differently. Part of that smells the nectar, and consequently the honey got from those flowers has a different flavour, a different taste to it.
And do you have a favourite honey recipe, Jed? I'm sure you must have tried many things with honey.
Yes, my wife makes beautiful honey cakes, and I love cake.
Where's the honey cake?
I've eaten it.
I'm coming to yours later. I am coming to yours. Should we find out if our classes enjoyed the honey and also enjoyed the whole online field trip, because we are pretty much coming to the end. So let's go over to Derby Grammar School now. Did we enjoy the honey, and what was your favourite part of today's online field trip?
Unfortunately, we haven't tried our honey yet, but we have really enjoyed our field trip, haven't we, boys?
Yeah.
Fantastic, lovely. Let's go over to Holy Trinity Rosehill School. Did we enjoy the online field trip, and how about the honey?
I enjoyed the honey, and our favourite bit was seeing the hives.
You love seeing the bees in the hive. I think I think everybody loved seeing the bees in the hive, and you enjoyed the honey too. Great stuff. Good stuff all round. Let's go to Takeley School now.
We're just eating our bread and honey and enjoying it very much. So would you like to say?
Bread and honey.
They've enjoyed it very much. Go ahead, look that way.
I enjoyed it very much.
She's enjoyed it very much.
You enjoyed it very much. We're so pleased, aren't we, Jed?
We are.
So all your hard work making the honey and all these bees' hard work, it's paid off because the children are enjoying it. Very much enjoying it. We're so pleased you've enjoyed this online field trip. Jed, before we go, what is the best thing about your job?
You're out in the countryside, you're by yourself, the mobile phone doesn't work, you're peace and quiet, and best of all, you've got 6 months holiday over winter.
It does sound good. I think there's probably quite a few of our children that think, I think I want to be a bee farmer. It's a good life. You might have a few of them coming to work for you in the future, Jed.
Yes, they can do what Rebecca's doing and sign up to the apprenticeship scheme.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, I'm sure all the details will be online. And if you want to take part in a field trip to a participating farm or a local food factory, you can do just that. All the details are online and you could be having lots of fun, just like the children you can see on the screen right now. It really is loads and loads of fun. You really get to see the food really close up. So don't forget to sign up. And from Buckinghamshire, in the middle of this forest, and from the bees, it's a goodbye, isn't it, Jed?
It is. Bye.
Goodbye. See you soon. Bye. Goodbye, Derby Grammar School. Bye, Holy Trinity Rosehill.
Bye.
Bye, Takeley School.
Bye.